It's Saturday, day 4, and the final day of the 2012 Society Leadership Conference here in Hong Kong. In keeping with our previous days, we do have a full agenda through mid-afternoon. We will start with in-depth learning forums, do some breakouts where society leaders can hear from winners of past society awards. We'll move into a plenary session. Then we will have 2 breakouts, 2 concurrents. One will address volunteer management, and the other will address the basic responsibilities of a nonprofit board. After that, we will move into our closing sessions, which this time around are regional meetings. I'll be chatting with individuals throughout the day, hearing from them as they come out of some of the sessions, and then getting a few closing remarks just about overall impressions of the SLC. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you will be able to join us for future Society Leadership Conferences. As you may know already, the 2013 SLC will be hosted in Washington, D.C. Hope we see you there. Talking with Liz DeFreitas, an SRR here in the Americas. You were in the Learning from the Winners session earlier this morning with Buffalo and Rochester. What's, let's say, top idea you heard coming out of there?
Well, thank you for asking, Julia. Buffalo and Rochester did a great job explaining why they won the award. They created a new event prior to their Research Challenge event that incorporated the Research Foundation. But during the roundtable discussions, it was interesting that I think the best takeaway was from the Oklahoma Society. They incorporate 2 major cities, and they are always trying to incorporate both of those cities by having events switch year to year and having board members from both cities on their board and just switching between both cities. So this past year, they were trying to incorporate, I think it's Tulsa and Oklahoma City. How can they get the members from one to another to their forecast dinner? And while they thought at first it wouldn't be a good idea, having a party bus drive from one city to another so they could actually bring the city to the event. And it ended up being a great idea. They were a little bit worried at first, but the bus ended up being sold out. They had to get a second bus, and it ended up being really popular, and they thought it added great member value. They broke even on the bus, but it added great member value to incorporate the whole society at their annual forecast dinner.
Great, thanks. Talking with Nancy Dudley, Head of Key Stakeholder Services for CFA Institute. Nancy, we just stepped out of the plenary session. What's, let's say, one impression that you're leaving with that you think you'd like to share with others?
One of the things that John said very early on in the session is that 20 years from now, if we don't restore trust in the finance industry, we'll have a generation that is completely unprepared for retirement. We have to encourage people to start saving and to start investing.
Thanks. Speaking with Raul Kashyap, the Head of Education Special Projects at CFA Institute, and we're just coming out of the Basic Responsibilities of Nonprofit Boards session. Raul, what were, let's say, 2 of the key points you heard in the session?
Sure. Lynn Menser, Associate General Counsel, gave us a talk on the corporate responsibilities and the governance responsibilities of societies. And some of the good discussions that people had were, what are the basic things that society leaders and board members need to know when they get started on their board term? What are the documents that they need to make sure they know first where they are and what should be in them? What's the right mix of people who should serve on boards and how that works? Lynn talked further about resources that CFA Institute makes available on society portals and centers, and basically the next steps are to continue the dialogue at future SLCs and annual conferences to try to build out society resources for good governance.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm chatting with Maren Amdahl, who presented our volunteer management session earlier today. Maren, what are, let's say, 2 key takeaways you want people to have walked out with?
Sure, Julia. I think the first one is always say thank you. You can never say thank you to your volunteers too often. And the other one is to remember that your members' time is not free, but it is a gift.
Thank you so much. I'm back with David Deaton, Director of Strategy and Market Research, but he's been here at the strategic planning table in the exhibit hall during the SLC. David, what have been some of your impressions as a staff exhibitor of how the SLC has gone?
I think it's gone really well, and some of my immediate takeaways and impressions is how engaging and how exciting the societies are and the society leaders are to learning the information and developing a dialogue with the tools and resources that we have, and we're happy to provide that support. So it's been really wonderful.
Great, thanks. Chatting with Bob Luck, who has been wandering around the SLC this week and found at the advocacy table. Bob, what are some of the impressions you're leaving with from the SLC?
I have really enjoyed the opportunity to get together with a great group of very bright people. We've talked a lot about sort of long-term vision, about making ethics a really important part of what we do and promoting that to the global community. And it's exciting for me because it's my core area of work, but it's also exciting to see the profession moving that way. I guess I'm most impressed with the people that have been here, staff included, but the volunteers also just bring so much to the table. There's so much more talent in the group of people that we have coming here than I have ever imagined. They're just bright, hardworking, energized people who bring a lot to the table. So it's fun to work with them. It's fun to see their ideas and have the opportunity to move the profession forward.
Talking with Lauren McAdams, again, wrapping up the SLC. Final session were the last regional meetings. Lauren, you just came out of the Midwest region. What do you think are some of the impressions that the society leaders are leaving with?
Well, our ending discussion focused around diversifying revenue at the society. A comment was made that the most successful societies seem to have revenue sources other than their membership dues. So we did a great brainstorming session on how you can increase that, either from sponsorships, partnerships with other organizations, even something as simple as increasing the price for non-members. So there were a lot of really good ideas, and it was a great discussion and a great way to end the conference.
Thanks. Talking with Leah, PCR from the South Central U.S. and Latin America region. And again, we're last day of the SLC, just coming out of the regional meeting sessions. What are some of the impressions you're leaving the SLC with?
A lot of our society leaders have come up with some really interesting ideas. Very excited about some of the initiatives in Latin America, the growth that they have, the ways that they have of pulling in the new candidates for the CFA exam to join the local societies, and some of the new initiatives that are occurring elsewhere. Dallas, for example, has a new committee that's focused on member engagement, and also we're working on some major regional collaborative efforts, which I think will be exciting going forward.
Chatting with Matt White, SRR. You were in the final Western Regional Luncheon. What one thought are you leaving with, or what did you hear that you think is impactful?
Well, I was with Jason Bell from the Western region, and the biggest thing that we actually were mentioning in there was, what are you going to do on Monday? When you get back to work, when you unpack, when you unwind from such a long and impactful trip, what are you going to bring to your society? And I thought it was very informative how we kind of coalesced everything together.
With Joanna Kwok, the Director of Society Relations in Asia Pacific, what are some of your observations from the regional meeting with the Asia Pacific group?
I think this time a lot of topics have been covered through different plenary sessions, and of course we are glad that the event is the first time to be held in Asia Pacific, so they're excited, first of all. And I think we discussed some of the futures of finance issues, what are the things that CFA Institute can help more in different markets. Of course, one size couldn't fit all. The other thing is we have quite a good discussion on the membership disclosure matter, and I think basically there are some kind of consensus viewpoint that the type of partnership, the type of so-called bundle membership between CFA institutes and societies would be a good idea. So I think it at least is good starting point on the partnership discussion. And furthermore, when we talk about all sorts of kind of collaborative ideas, which I think when we emphasize more the partnership mindset, the partnership between societies with CFA Institute and among themselves, this is really a good platform for them to drill down further and examine more what they could be done. So I see it's a really good positive first starting for our FY13, and from here, Hong Kong as well. I'm so glad. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Talking with Chip Deal, Head of Society Relations. Chip, so the SLC just finished up and folks are heading out. What are the final thoughts and impressions you have?
Well, there's still a lot of energy amongst everybody, and at the same time a lot of exhaustion that comes from several days of being with one another and sharing and learning from one another. And I guess 5 key takeaways in my mind come immediately to mind. One is when you get a group of very passionate volunteers together, several hundred global volunteers together as we had here at the SLC, just the energy level is incredible that takes place. And that's always been a hallmark of the SLC all 2 decades, and this year was certainly no exception while we were here in Hong Kong. Secondly, a lot of very important discussions on key industry issues. John Rogers, for example, today talked about the future of finance. What is the future of finance, and what role can societies play? What role should societies play in helping guide that future direction? So issues such as that and other important issues had a great deal of vetting, a great deal of very in-depth discussions that are important to all of us. Third, as is always the case at the SLC, a lot of very helpful presentations on society operational and governance issues. This morning, for example, Lynn Mincer talked about key responsibilities of board members, and Maren Amdahl, the executive director of the San Francisco Society, talked about how to have a very effective volunteer management program. So all of these are critical to society's success because without the volunteers, nothing happens. So hearing on board governance and volunteer management, very important. Fourth is just the sharing of ideas that always takes place at the SLC, learning from one another. There are new ideas out there certainly, but a lot of ideas that are already in place that societies can adapt to their own need, and all the way to the final regional luncheons we had today, that sharing was taking place. Finally, it's just the fact that everything out of the SLC will be posted on the Society Center very shortly. All the presentations, all the handout materials, all the summary notes from the by size meetings, the regional meetings, and other breakout sessions will all be up there on the Society Center for the benefit of the several hundred who will hear and the hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers who could not be with us here in Hong Kong, so that everyone can benefit from it. So it's a great several days. I think we're all exhausted, but it's a good exhaustion, and we're looking forward to the regional meetings that will take place in March of 13 and next year's SLC, which will be in Washington, D.C. in mid-September. So it's a great conference.
Great, thank you.